Welcome back to Marvelous Videos. I'm Rylan, and this is Terrifying Monsters from Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, Explored. It's been quite some time since mainstream cinema provided a good horror film for kids, thanks to horror heroes Guillermo del Toro and Ovredal for taking on the iconic book series of Alvin Schwartz, and illustrated by Stephen Gammell. It takes an incredible amount of effort to adapt classic folklore and urban legends into a feature film, and the main story is so well crafted that it offers something new and exciting. The creative team of Mike Elizalde, Mike Hill, and Norman Cabera has done some exclusive work that has left quite a mark. I'm of course referring to the film Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, released in 2019, rated as PG-13 but meant to terrify audiences of all ages. Together with the horror effects and talented actors such as Troy James, Javier Botet, Kathleen Pollard, and Mark Steger, Scary Stories has earned its place in the world of horror films. So let us dive into the creepiest monsters of this film that will definitely haunt you at night. Before we get into today's video, however, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is just a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thanks. Now, let's begin. Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, released in 2019. The film took us to the Halloween of 1968 in the small town of Mill Valley, where we meet Ramon driving into town, teenagers Stella Nichols, who was a die-hard horror fan, Chuck Steinberg, and Ogie Hildebrandt making plans for Halloween. We also meet Tommy Milner and his gang, who loved bullying people and didn't even spare the Scarecrow as he thrashed it to his heart's content. As Tommy and his team raced off in his car, the camera focused on the Scarecrow for just a few seconds. Are we getting a hint that this is not the last time we'll see him? Well, let's find out. Stella, Chuck, and Ogie threw poop, eggs, and other trash at Tommy's car, and when they retaliated, the trio raced off and hid in Ramon's car parked in the drive-in theater. From there, the group of four went to explore a local haunted house. The house belonged to the wealthy Bellows family, who were the first family to settle there and establish the paper mill, and eventually the town was formed. In reality, the Bellows house was a mansion located in southern Ontario, Canada. Stella narrated the story of Sarah Bellows, the youngest daughter of the Bellows family, that had been locked inside of her room. There was a myth that Sarah told scary stories to the town's children, and some of them never reached home and were found poisoned later. Eventually, they found the controversial storybook that belonged to Sarah Bellows. Incidentally, Chucky's elder sister Ruth was in the car with Tommy, and they followed them to the Bellows house. Tommy pushed Ruth inside and locked them all inside Sarah's room. Stella, overwhelmed by Sarah's book, began to chant, "Sarah Bellows, tell me a story." And soon, we see a dark shadow rising from the room and opening the locked door. The group went back home, but Ramon went to stay the night at Stella's house, as Tommy had wrecked his car. As Stella opens the book, suddenly a news story appears on a blank page about Harold, the Scarecrow at Tommy's house. As Tommy went to deliver eggs, the Scarecrow came alive, and whoops, forget the crow friends, the Scarecrow would scare the hell out of many. It stabbed Tommy with a pitchfork and caused Tommy to transform into a Scarecrow himself, as was precisely written in Sarah Bellows' book. The next day, Tommy went missing, while Stella and Ramon found that Harold the Scarecrow was wearing the same jacket as Tommy. Stella returned Sarah's book, but went back to Stella's bookshelf. This time, to their horror, a story titled The Big Toe was found, written involving Ogie. As Stella and Ramon tried to warn him, a corpse began searching for its missing toe in a stew that Ogie unwittingly ate. Soon, Ogie disappeared as the corpse dragged him under the bed. The terrified friends tried to destroy the book, but they were unsuccessful. They decided to inquire about Sarah. As Stella, Chucky, and Ramon surfed through records, another story, The Red Spot, appeared in the book, and this time, Ruth was the main character. A red spider bite on Ruth swelled up and finally exploded to release thousands of spiders. Ruth was rescued and taken to the hospital, but she was left traumatized. As the group investigated, they reached the local hospital, where they retrieved the recording stating that Sarah was admitted to the hospital by her own brother. He performed the electroshock therapy to drive her mad. The Bellows family mill had been poisoning the town's water with mercury, and Sarah was trying to reveal the truth and save the children who were dying by the poison of the town water. That is why the Bellows family tortured and isolated her, while blaming her entirely for the consequences. As Stella and Ramon listened to the recording, Chucky was attacked by the Pale Lady from his recurring nightmares as she absorbed him. Stella and Ramon were soon arrested for trespassing in the hospital, and in the police station, Police Chief Turner revealed that Ramon was escaping from serving the Vietnam War. Ramon told Stella that after seeing his brother's body returned to them in pieces, he was petrified to go to war. Suddenly, Turner's dog started behaving strangely, and Ramon realized that it was his turn, as the next creature would be the Jangly Man from the campfire stories that scared him a lot as a child. child. The Jangly Man killed Turner and attempted to kill Ramon. Stella runs to the Bellows house to confront Sarah. Troy James, who appeared on America's Got Talent, featured as the Jangly Man, as he performed the significant backward movement and crawled upside down by himself. Inside the Bellows house, Stella was taken back in time, as she literally became Sarah and started experiencing Sarah's life, exactly how she had led and all the things that she faced all those years ago. As Stella was locked inside Sarah's room by the Bellows family, she finally confronted Sarah's ghost and promised to write the true story of her innocence, but she needed to stop her rage and hurting other people. Sarah agreed, while she and the Jangly Man disappeared. Stella wrote Sarah's story, as promised, while Ramon accepted his enlistment and left for the war, as Stella promised to write him letters every day. As Stella and Ruth returned home in the car with Stella's father, she vowed to bring back Ogie and Chucky as well, as she was sure to find a solution in Sarah's book. The political backdrop was appropriate, with Nixon posters defaced with swastikas and young excited boys signing up for the service. The scene set for Stella's room was also perfect, as her bedroom wall is plastered with posters and photos of the horror genre. The film has intense scares, fun adventures, and a likable cast. Most of the monsters displayed brilliant practical work, and the CGI effects were also quite entertaining. The combined impact of the camera work, creepy lighting techniques, wardrobe, and makeup made the film memorable in Hollywood history. The musical theme playing in the movie is the Hearse song, which is incidentally another story from the books. All monsters from the movie explored. There is no hiding from Sarah Bellows. She knows what you're scared of, and she'll write a story about you and your deepest fear, which soon comes alive and attacks you. The monsters or creatures depicted in this film were ones that each of the characters were scared of. So let's analyze all the creepy monsters one by one and compare their original story with the story in the movie. The Pale Lady. The Pale Lady is the character in the horror story The Dream, about a girl who has a nightmare in which she meets the Pale Lady. The character is based on a story described by Augustus Hare in his autobiography. Lexi Morgan was haunted by a dream where she saw herself walking up a dark staircase leading to a bedroom. A carpet on the floor was designed with squares that looked like trapdoors. She dreamt on that as she slept. A woman with a pale face, long black hair, and black eyes slipped inside the room silently. She whispered in Lexi's ears, warning her to run away from that evil place. Lexi woke up screaming and spent a sleepless, horrifying night. The following day, she decided to visit the town of Dorset, inside of Kingston. She looked for a room in a pretty house at the top of the hill, but incidentally, the staircase and the bedroom were exactly the same as she had dreamt before. At first, she thought that everything was a coincidence, as she stared at the carpet and the big nails that fastened the windows. The landlady went to go get her some tea when there was a knock at the door. When Lexi opened the door, she saw the Pale Lady instead of the landlady. Lexi quickly grabbed her things and ran as fast as she could. Gammell's illustration of the Pale Lady as a colorless, formless character with thin long hair, black beady eyes, and a long thin smile was enough to send a chill down anyone's spine. Still, in reality, the translation of the character to the big screen was apparently less scary than the other monsters depicted in the film. Sarah Bellows. I don't know how to describe Sarah Bellows' character. She'd been locked away and tortured by her family, as well as blamed for the crimes that she didn't commit. This turned her into an enraged spirit after she had committed suicide. She was the third child of Delaney and Deodat Bellows, born with albinism, and thus kept locked in a room hidden in the basement. Sarah used to write scary stories and tell them to the children visiting her through the wall of her room. When the children started dying, the Bellows family started a rumor that Sarah was practicing witchcraft with her housekeeper Sylvie and her daughter Lulu on the children visiting her, and that they had ultimately poisoned the children. But in reality, the children had died due to mercury poisoning of the town river disposed by the Bellows paper mill, so that their paper mill and the entire family were spared from the liability of the children's death. When Sarah refused to take blame and tried to warn the children about the river pollution, her family admitted her to Penhurst Asylum by her own brother, Dr. Ephraim Bellows. Her cruel brother gave her electric shock treatment and kept her in isolation to make her mentally imbalanced and confess to her misdeeds. Sarah didn't admit anything, but took her own life and became an angry, vengeful spirit. The rumors that the Bellows family had spread had turned into a myth that whoever entered the Bellows house and said, "Sarah Bellows, tell me a story," would soon die. Stella was a horror freak, so when she got hold of Sarah's storybook, she uttered these exact words: "Sarah Bellows, tell me a story," thus awakening the spirit of Sarah, who was now after all the children who had visited the Bellows house on Halloween night. After her friends started disappearing mysteriously, Stella realized that the entire Bellows family had disappeared in the same way, as their stories had been written in Sarah's book as well. Finally, Stella decided to write Sarah's true story, her heroic intentions to protect the town children, which finally calmed Sarah's spirit, and all the monsters vanished. Spiders. Very few people are not scared of spiders, and I am definitely not one of them. One spider is enough horror to deal with, and here you have hundreds of them. The spiders belong to the story of the red spot, and the concerned character was Ruth. After Ruth returned from the Bellows house, she noticed one red spot on her cheek, which she concluded was from a spider bite. The original story related to this one is very similar, as the name of both the main characters are Ruth. In the original story, while Ruth was sleeping, a spider crawled onto her cheek, and the red spot appeared the very next day. In the film, cobwebs stuck onto Ruth as she was pushed into Sarah's room. That was probably when she was bit by the spider. The next day, she found a red spot on her cheek. In both the stories, the red spot grew into a red boil. In the film, we saw that a strand of black hair had popped out of the boil, but alas, that was not a hair, that was the leg of a spider. As soon as Ruth pulled it, the boil burst, and hundreds of baby spiders crawled out of the boil. The spiders didn't kill Ruth, but definitely scared her psychologically. The Toe Ghoul. This is one of the grotesque stories from Schwartz's collection, titled The Big Toe. A young boy finds a severed toe in the garden, which he showed to his father. Imagine the horror factor when the father casually suggests that they have it for supper. In the film, the suspense starts when we see Ogie talking with his mother, intending to eat the soup that she had kept in the refrigerator. His mother kept on saying that no soup had been prepared that day, but Ogie was not ready to listen. Over the walkie-talkie, Stella and Ramon kept shouting, asking Ogie not to eat anything, but he wouldn't listen. His friends knew that there was a toe floating in the soup. The audience also knew, but Ogie was totally unaware. When he finally realized, he began vomiting, but more than disgusted, he was terrified as the gruesome corpse came in looking for his toe. Ogie tried to hide from the Toe Ghoul, but finally, the monster dragged him under the bed as both of them disappeared. The hiding under the bed was the usual nail-biting sequence, putting the audience at the edge of their seats. Harold the Scarecrow. There has been a comparison between Harold the Scarecrow and the Jangly Man. Though the majority thought that the Jangly Man had a higher horror factor, I personally felt that Harold, with his empty belly and cockroach-infested structure, was quite scarier than the Jangly Man. In the original story, Harold was made up of sacks stuffed with straw by two farmers, Thomas and Alfred, who had named him after another farmer that they hated. They bullied the Scarecrow in the same way that Tommy used to bully Harold. One day, Harold comes to life in front of Thomas and Alfred, climbed up on the roof, and started stomping on it. Panic-stricken, Thomas and Alfred left with their cows, but when Thomas returned to get their milking stools, Harold flayed Thomas alive. In the film, Harold was the Scarecrow in Tommy's crop field, subjected to repeated ridicule and thrashing by Tommy. But after Tommy's story had been written in Sarah's book, Harold became alive here as well, and soon stabbed him with a pitchfork. Instead of blood, there was hay everywhere, as he even vomited hay, keeping in mind that this is a PG-13 cinema. Thus, Tommy had been converted into a Scarecrow, hanging in the same place as Harold had been, and Harold disappeared. The Jangly Man. The Jangly Man is probably the creepiest monster in the film, who can disassemble and reassemble as desired. His backstory goes as follows. A long time back, there lived an old woman all by herself. One night, she felt very lonely and wished for some company. Her desire was fulfilled as 2 feet came down the chimney. Then appeared 2 arms and 2 legs, a head, and soon a body, which resembled the Jangly Man, who started dancing around the room faster and faster until he stopped and looked into the woman's eyes. When the woman asked in a shivering voice why he had come, he simply replied, "I come for you." In the film as well, the Jangly Man appeared from the chimney, but here, his head comes first and says, "Me tai doti walker," which refers to another story from the series. The monster reassembled itself and snapped the cop's neck and proceeded to kill Ramon, who was his main target. Del Toro has said that the Jangly Man was supposed to be Ramon's dead brother returning from Vietnam, and the creature was originally going to have 8 limbs, combining 2 bodies, but that would have required too much digital work. So instead, some interesting practical work and James's ability to stretch gave Jangly Man the desired look. Is there going to be a Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark 2? Paramount and Entertainment One have made an official announcement that a sequel to the 2019 movie Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark is being made by almost the same team that started it. Del Toro is crafting the story once again, while Dan and Kevin Hageman have written the screenplay. Norwegian director Andre Ovredal is also returning as the director. Although the announcement has confirmed the return of the creative team, nothing has been announced about the actors of the movie. The ending of the first film had implied that Stella would surely find a way to get back her best friends, and so, for the film's sake, it would be best if all the actors reprised their roles to maintain the continuity. There is also a possibility that none of the actors will come back, and there would be a time jump, just in the way it happened in It Chapter 2. It is unlikely that Sarah Bellows' character will be involved in the film, as it was rounded up quite nicely in the previous film. But the main question that follows is, where are Augie, Chucky, and Tommy? So it is probable that Stella, Ruth, and Stella's father would search for a way to rescue them. As fans of all things horror, we are eagerly awaiting for Augie and Chucky's return. How about you? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to send a like and subscribe to our channel, if you haven't already, that is. For Marvelous Videos, I'm Rylan. Have a good one, be safe, and thanks for watching.